Sarah was on the brink of despair. After several months of struggle, medical bills had piled up to the ceiling, and her modest salary as a primary school teacher barely covered the essentials. Her days were filled with worries, her nights with insomnia, and every free moment was tainted by uncertainty. Yet, despite everything, she kept a smile for her students, those little ones who saw her as a ray of sunshine in their school days. It was a rainy afternoon when the call came that would change her life. Sarah was sitting at the kitchen table, reviewing the bills she already knew by heart. The phone rang, and, on the other end, a professional but friendly voice introduced himself as the lawyer for the Valdez family. They were offering her a job as a caregiver for a terminally ill elderly.
Mon Emer Valdez.
The offer included a generous salary and accommodation in the Valdez mansion, an opportunity Sarah could not pass up. With her heart full of hope and some nervousness, Sarah accepted the offer. She knew it would not be easy to leave her life and her job behind, but circumstances pushed her to seek a new beginning. Saying goodbye to her colleagues and students, she felt a mix of sadness and expectation. The future, though uncertain, offered her a new direction, a chance to rebuild her life, and perhaps find a greater purpose. The day of her departure arrived quickly. With her belongings packed in a couple of suitcases, Sarah headed to the address provided by the lawyer. The Valdez mansion stood majestically on the outskirts of the city, surrounded by well-kept gardens and opulence she had only seen in movies. Upon arrival, she was greeted by the household staff, who treated her with a courtesy that only heightened her feeling of being in a completely different world. As they took her to the room that would be her new home, Sarah couldn't help but feel a mix of excitement and fear. She knew Mr. Valdez was gravely ill and that her role would be crucial in his final days. But there was also something in the air, a sense of mystery she couldn't quite identify. That night, as she settled into her new room, Sarah reflected on the unexpected turn her life had taken. The mansion's walls, filled with history, the solemn silence of the hallways, everything seemed to herald the beginning of something significant, something beyond her understanding at that moment. With a sigh, she allowed herself a moment of calm, trusting that this new beginning would be the change she so desperately needed. As she closed her eyes, a faint smile appeared on her face. Despite the difficulties, she had found a new opportunity, a renewed hope. With the dawn of a new day, new doors would open, and Sarah was ready to face them with courage and an open heart. The first morning in the Valdez mansion, Sarah woke up early, the first rays of sunlight filtering through the curtains of her room. She took a moment to get her bearings, quickly remembering where she was and why she had come. As she stepped into the hallway, her gaze fell on the exquisite details of the decor, a stark contrast to the simplicity of her previous home. She felt a mix of awe and apprehension as she faced this new, unfamiliar environment. As she descended the stairs, she was greeted by Mrs. Teresa Valdez, the wife of Mr. Valdez. Teresa was an elegantly poised woman with a penetrating gaze, dressed in an impeccable silk blouse and matching skirt. Her smile seemed polite, but her eyes did not convey warmth. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine as she accepted the woman's greeting. "Good morning, Sarah," Teresa said in a tone that mixed kindness with a slight hint of superiority. "I hope you rested well. I will take you to see Mr. Valdez in a moment." Sarah nodded, grateful and nervous at the same time. As she followed Teresa through the spacious hallways, she couldn't help but notice the coldness in the atmosphere. The mansion's staff avoided eye contact and seemed to move with an almost mechanical efficiency, which only heightened the feeling that something was not quite right. Finally, they arrived at Mr. Valdez's room. Teresa opened the door and, with a gesture of her hand, invited Sarah to enter. The old man was sitting in a chair by the window, looking out at the garden. His complexion was frail, but his eyes retained a sparkle of intelligence and curiosity. When he saw Sarah, he gave a warm and sincere smile, a stark contrast to his wife's coldness. "Sarah, right?" Mr. Valdez said in a soft but firm voice. "I've heard a lot about you. Thank you for coming." Sarah approached, taking the old man's hand gently. "It's an honor to be here, Mr. Valdez. I hope I can be of help." Teresa watched the interaction from the door, her eyes analyzing Sarah's every move. "I'll leave you with him, Sarah. If you need anything, don't hesitate to ask," she said, before leaving, closing the door behind her. With Teresa out of the room, the atmosphere visibly relaxed. Sarah sat next to Mr. Valdez, and they began to talk. She discovered that despite his condition, he had a sharp mind and an indomitable spirit. They shared stories, and the old man was genuinely interested in getting to know her. As the days passed, Sarah noticed that Teresa barely interacted with her husband. Her behavior was always correct, but there was a palpable distance, a coldness that contrasted with the warmth Sarah began to feel for Mr. Valdez. The suspicion started to grow in her mind. What really motivated Teresa? Why did she seem so distant and calculating? Sarah decided to stay alert. She knew something was amiss and was determined to protect Mr. Valdez, whose vulnerability was evident. While continuing to perform her duties, she promised herself she would uncover the truth behind the appearances in that luxurious mansion of secrets. Sarah's arrival at the Valdez mansion not only marked a new beginning for her but also unearthed shadows and mysteries that seemed intertwined with the house's opulence. With each passing day, Sarah delved deeper into the heart of a broken family, preparing to face the challenges and reveal the hidden truths surrounding her. The bond between Sarah and Mr. Valdez grew stronger with each day they spent together. Despite his fragile state of health, the old man showed renewed energy in Sarah's presence. She, with her compassionate nature and constant smile, brought back a spark of life he had long lost. One afternoon, as Sarah read aloud from a book of poetry she had found in the mansion's extensive library, Mr. Valdez gently interrupted her. "Sarah, have you ever thought about what it would be like to have a real family?" he asked, his eyes filled with nostalgia and sadness. Sarah lowered the book and looked at him attentively. "Of course, Mr. Valdez. We all dream of that at some point. Why do you ask?" The old man sighed, his gaze lost in a distant past. "I had a daughter, but for reasons I don't want to go into, we were never able to be together. I've always longed to experience what it's like to have a loving family. I was wondering if you would be willing to do me a special favor." Sarah looked at him with curiosity, waiting for him to continue. "I would like, for one day, for you to pretend to be my daughter, just so I can feel, even for a brief moment, the joy of having a family. I know it's a lot to ask, but..." Mr. Valdez's request deeply moved Sarah. Seeing the vulnerability in his eyes and hearing the sadness in his voice made her understand how lonely he felt. Without hesitation, she nodded with a warm smile. "Of course, Mr. Valdez. It would be an honor for me." The old man smiled, his eyes shining with gratitude. The next day, the family reunion took place. The mansion staff prepared a special meal, and for a few hours, the cold and calculating atmosphere Sarah had felt since her arrival dissipated. Sarah and Mr. Valdez shared stories, laughed, and enjoyed each other's company as if they were truly father and daughter. During that day, Sarah strove to fill the void in the old man's heart. They held hands, strolled through the gardens, and even shared invented anecdotes about their family. The joy on Mr. Valdez's face was palpable, and Sarah felt a deep connection with him, as if somehow destiny had brought them together for a special reason. However, the tranquility of the day would not last. Just as the sun began to set, Teresa burst into the room accompanied by a man dressed in an expensive suit with a serious expression. The lawyer. "What's going on here?" demanded Teresa, her voice sharp and her eyes full of suspicion. Sarah and Mr. Valdez exchanged a worried look. The unexpected arrival of Teresa and the lawyer shattered the calm and happiness they had created. Teresa, with a serious expression, held a document in her hand. "This is Mr. Valdez's will," she announced, looking at Sarah with disdain. "It's important that we all review it." Mr. Valdez tensed, and Sarah could feel his discomfort. Something about Teresa's attitude and the mention of the will set off an alarm in Sarah's mind. What was really going on? The lawyer began reading the document, and as he did, Sarah couldn't help but notice the furtive, calculating glances Teresa cast in her direction. The lawyer's words mixed with her thoughts, filling her with growing suspicion. Could it be that Teresa's motives were darker than she had imagined? The day that had begun as a family dream was quickly turning into a nightmare of uncertainty and distrust. As the reading of the will continued, Sarah promised herself she would uncover the truth, no matter how deeply it was buried. The atmosphere in the room became tense as the lawyer continued reading the will. Teresa, standing beside him, maintained an expression that mixed impatience and triumph. Every word of the document resonated in Sarah's mind, increasing her suspicions. "And in the event of my death, all my assets and properties will pass to my wife, Teresa Valdez," concluded the lawyer, closing the document with a final gesture. Mr. Valdez remained silent, his face pale and tense. Sarah, for her part, could not hide her unease. The situation did not add up. Everything seemed calculated and coldly planned. "Thank you. That will be all for now," Teresa said, dismissing the lawyer with a wave of her hand. Then she turned to Sarah with a smile that did not reach her eyes. "I hope everything is clear." Sarah nodded, feeling she understood less and less. Alone with Mr. Valdez after everyone had left, Sarah approached him, concerned. "Is everything all right, Mr. Valdez?" The old man sighed, passing a trembling hand over his forehead. "Sarah, there are things you do not yet understand. Teresa has not always been like this, but lately, I don't know whom to trust." Sarah took his hand gently. "I'm here to help, Mr. Valdez. If there is anything you need, anything at all, please tell me." The old man looked at her with eyes full of gratitude and sadness. "Thank you, Sarah. Your words mean more than you can imagine." The following days were filled with growing tension. Sarah could not shake the feeling that something dark lurked in the corners of the mansion. She decided to be more vigilant, observing Teresa and the staff, looking for any sign that her suspicions were true. One night, while reviewing some documents in the library, Sarah found an envelope hidden in one of the books. Upon opening it, she discovered a series of papers describing financial manipulations and questionable medical decisions, all signed by Teresa. Her heart raced as she read the details. It was clear Teresa had plans beyond simply caring for her sick husband. With these new discoveries in hand, Sarah confronted Teresa. She found her in the living room, sipping a glass of wine and enjoying the opulence around her. Seeing Sarah enter, Teresa raised an eyebrow, an ironic smile playing on her lips. "What is it, Sarah? You look worried." Sarah took a deep breath, feeling the adrenaline rush through her veins. "I found these documents," she said, holding up the envelope. "Can you explain what all this means?" Teresa looked at the envelope and then at Sarah, her expression changing from surprise to coldness. "It's not what you think," she replied, her voice firm. "You have no idea. What is at stake here?" Sarah stepped forward, her determination clear. "What I see is that you have been manipulating the finances and medical decisions of Mr. Valdez. What do you hope to achieve with this, Teresa?" The woman stood up, her gaze now filled with fury. You don't understand anything. All of this is to protect what is mine. My husband is no longer capable of managing anything, and someone has to do it. But not this way, Sarah replied, her voice trembling with indignation. He deserves something better. Teresa approached, her eyes fixed on Sarah's. I suggest you drop this, Sarah. You don't know whom you're dealing with. Sarah did not back down, feeling a new strength within her. I won't drop it. I will do whatever it takes to protect Mr. Valdez. I won't let you hurt him. Teresa let out a cold, bitter laugh. We'll see how long you can keep that promise. The confrontation left Sarah more determined than ever. She knew she had to protect Mr. Valdez and uncover the complete truth, no matter the risks. The disturbing revelations had transformed her role in the mansion from caregiver to protector, and she was ready to face any challenge that came her way. The following weeks turned into a careful dance between Sarah and Teresa. Sarah remained alert, always watching for any signs of danger to Mr. Valdez. Each day, the bond between them grew stronger, and Sarah felt more like the daughter he never had. Despite the constant tensions with Teresa, Sarah dedicated herself fully to the care of the old man. One night, as the wind blew strongly outside the mansion, Mr. Valdez suffered a severe health crisis. Sarah was in her room, reading, when she heard a thud from the old man's room. She ran there, finding Mr. Valdez unconscious on the floor. Help! I need help! She shouted, desperate, while trying to stay calm. She knew every second counted. Teresa appeared at the door, with a look of surprise and concern that Sarah wasn't sure was genuine. Call an ambulance quickly, Sarah ordered, as she tried to stabilize Mr. Valdez. Teresa, though hesitant, nodded and ran off. Sarah had received basic first aid training, and that night, every fragment of that knowledge was put to the test. She managed to keep Mr. Valdez's airways clear and control his pulse until the ambulance arrived. The paramedics praised her quick action, stating that she had saved the old man's life. During the ride to the hospital, Sarah held Mr. Valdez's hand, whispering words of encouragement. She felt a mix of fear and determination. She could not allow him to die, not now that there was so much to discover and protect. Hours later, while waiting in the emergency room, Teresa approached Sarah. Thank you, she said, with an unusually soft voice. You saved his life. Sarah nodded, exhausted but firm. I did what I had to. He means a lot to me. Teresa observed her for a moment, a mix of emotions crossing her face. Perhaps I misjudged you, Sarah. Before Sarah could respond, the doctor came out to give them news. Mr. Valdez is stable for now. He will need rest and constant care, but I believe he will pull through. Sarah felt a wave of relief. She accompanied the doctor to Mr. Valdez's room, finding him conscious and weak, but with a smile on his face upon seeing her. Thank you, Sarah, he whispered, his voice barely audible. I knew I could trust you. In the days that followed, Sarah became the primary emotional support for Mr. Valdez. They spent hours talking, sharing stories, and building a relationship that felt increasingly like a true familial bond. Sarah's constant presence seemed to give the old man strength, who clung to life with renewed determination. Teresa, for her part, seemed to have softened slightly, although her intentions remained a mystery to Sarah. The crisis had created a moment of truce between them. However, Sarah remained cautious. She knew that any moment of carelessness could be fatal. One afternoon, while sitting in the garden, Mr. Valdez took Sarah's hand with unexpected strength. I want you to know something, he said, looking into her eyes. You are more than a caregiver to me. You are the daughter I always dreamed of having. Sarah felt tears well up in her eyes. And you are like a father to me, Mr. Valdez. I will do everything I can to protect and care for you. The old man smiled, moved. Thank you, Sarah. I know together we can overcome anything. That night, as she prepared to sleep, Sarah reflected on all that had happened. The crisis had strengthened her bond with Mr. Valdez and reaffirmed her purpose. She was determined to uncover all the truth and fight against any threat that could endanger the man she now considered her family. The battle had only just begun, but Sarah was ready to face it with all her heart. Peace at the Valdez mansion was brief. Although Mr. Valdez's health crisis had brought Sarah closer and created a temporary truce with Teresa, the feeling that something dark lurked did not leave Sarah. She felt there were still many hidden truths, and determined to protect the old man, she decided to investigate further. One afternoon, while Mr. Valdez slept, Sarah returned to the library. She remembered the envelope with documents she had found earlier and decided to look for more clues. She knew she had to be careful, as any mistake could alert Teresa. After hours of meticulous searching, she found a hidden safe behind a painting. With some skill and patience, she managed to open it. Inside, she found a folder with legal and financial documents detailing suspicious fund movements, offshore bank accounts, and transactions signed by Teresa. But what struck her the most was a series of medical reports indicating changes in Mr. Valdez's treatment, with explicit orders to reduce certain crucial medications for his health. The discovery left her cold. Teresa was not only manipulating finances, but she was also playing with Mr. Valdez's life. Determined to confront Teresa, Sarah made copies of all the documents and headed to the living room, where she found Teresa talking to the lawyer. "We need to talk," Sarah said, her voice firm. Teresa looked at her with disdain, but Sarah did not let herself be intimidated. Now, Teresa and the lawyer exchanged glances, but she agreed, visibly irritated. "What is so urgent, Sarah?" Sarah pulled out the copies of the documents and placed them on the table. "I found these in the library. I need to know the truth." Teresa took the documents and quickly reviewed them. Her face hardened. "You have no right to snoop into our private affairs." Sarah did not back down. "I am here to take care of Mr. Valdez. These documents show you have been manipulating his treatment and finances. What are you hoping to achieve with this?" Teresa took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. "What I do is for the good of this family. My husband is no longer able to manage his affairs. Someone has to make the tough decisions." "Tough decisions do not mean endangering his life," replied Sarah, her voice trembling with indignation. "He deserves to be surrounded by people who truly care about his well-being." The lawyer, who had remained silent until that moment, intervened. "Sarah, it is better you leave this to the professionals. You do not understand the complexities of the situation." Sarah looked at him, determined. "I understand enough to know Mr. Valdez is in danger, and I won't stand by while he suffers." Teresa shot the lawyer a furious look, who quickly nodded and left the room, leaving them alone. "Sarah, I warn you not to get involved in what doesn't concern you. This is my home and my family. You have no idea what you are doing." Sarah approached, looking her straight in the eye. "What I know is that Mr. Valdez deserves to live his final days in peace and dignity. I will not allow you to hurt him anymore." Teresa pressed her lips together and turned away, leaving the room without saying another word. The confrontation left Sarah more determined than ever. She knew Teresa would not stop and had to be prepared for anything. That night, while Mr. Valdez slept, Sarah reviewed the documents once more, looking for anything that could help her protect him. She found a letter written by Mr. Valdez, addressed to someone he had never mentioned. The letter spoke of regrets and secrets from the past, hinting at a relationship Sarah did not know about. Intrigued, she decided to investigate more about that person the next day. She felt she was close to discovering something crucial, something that could change everything she knew about Mr. Valdez and his family. The battle had only just begun, and Sarah was ready to fight with all her strength to protect the man she now considered her father. The revelation of the documents had brought Sarah to a critical point. She felt she was close to unraveling a mystery that could change everything. The letter she found in the library mentioned a person named Elena, someone Mr. Valdez had loved deeply in his youth. Sarah decided to look for more information about her. During breakfast, while helping Mr. Valdez, Sarah decided to talk to him about the letter. "Mr. Valdez, I found a letter of yours addressed to someone named Elena. It seems she was very important to you." The old man looked at her with surprise and nostalgia. "Elena? Yes, she was the love of my life. We were separated by circumstances beyond our control, but I always carried her in my heart." "Why do you ask, Sarah?" Sarah took his hand gently. "I think it's important we talk about her. Maybe there is more I should know." Mr. Valdez sighed, as if releasing a weight from his chest. "You're right, Sarah. It's time. You knew the truth. Elena and I had a daughter, but I never got to know her. Circumstances separated us before I could be with them. I always regretted not being there for them." Sarah felt a knot in her stomach. The old man's words resonated deeply in her heart. What happened to Elena and her daughter? "Elena died when the girl was still very young. Her family decided to keep me away. I don't know what became of my daughter, only that she exists somewhere. I always dreamed of finding her, but life kept me away from that possibility." The words of Mr. Valdez stayed with Sarah. The possibility that she could be the lost daughter of Mr. Valdez filled her with a mix of hope and fear. She decided to investigate more about Elena and her family, looking for clues that would confirm her suspicions. Several days passed as Sarah gathered all the information she could. Finally, she discovered an adoption record revealing that a girl named Sarah had been adopted by a family under circumstances similar to those described by Mr. Valdez. Her heart pounded as she absorbed the truth. She was the biological daughter of Mr. Valdez. With this new revelation, Sarah decided to confront Mr. Valdez. She approached him one afternoon with the documents in hand. "Mr. Valdez, I think I have something you need to see." She showed him the documents, and as he read them, his eyes filled with tears. "Sarah, is it possible? Is it you?" Sarah nodded, tears in her eyes. "I believe so. The documents match what you told me. I was adopted when I was very young and never knew my biological parents. Everything indicates you are my father." Mr. Valdez hugged her tightly, his tears falling freely. "I can't believe I finally found you. All these years not knowing, and now you're here." The discovery changed the dynamics in the mansion completely. Teresa, upon learning the truth, showed a mix of shock and fury. She knew this would significantly alter her position and power within the family. However, Sarah and Mr. Valdez were determined to rebuild their relationship and protect each other. The following days were filled with deep and emotional conversations between Sarah and her father. They shared stories, memories, and dreams they had kept secret for years. The bond between them strengthened, and Sarah became her father's greatest defender, determined to protect him from any threat, including Teresa. Mr. Valdez, with Sarah's help, decided to take legal action to ensure his well-being and protect his assets from any manipulation by Teresa. Together, they worked to modify his will and ensure Sarah was recognized as his daughter and legitimate heir. The truth had come to light, and although the battles were not over, Sarah and Mr. Valdez found solace in their newly discovered family bond. United by love and determination, they prepared to face any challenge that came their way, knowing they now had something worth fighting for. The truth had changed everything at the Valdez mansion. Sarah and her biological father were determined to protect their newly discovered family bond and ensure a future free from Teresa's manipulations. The tension in the house was palpable, but Sarah's Determination did not waver. Mr. Valdez, with Sarah's help, called a meeting with his lawyer to formalize the changes to his will. Sitting in the lawyer's office, the old man spoke with renewed firmness. "I want my daughter, Sarah, to be officially recognized as my heir, and I want Teresa to be disinherited." The lawyer nodded, taking notes. "This will be a legally complicated process, but it is entirely possible. Are you sure of this decision, Mr. Valdez?" Mr. Valdez looked at Sarah, his gaze full of love and determination. "I have never been more sure of anything in my life." When Teresa found out about the decision, her fury was overwhelming. She stormed into the room where Sarah and her father were sitting, her eyes blazing with rage. "How dare you do this? I've been by your side all this time." Mr. Valdez looked at her with a mix of sadness and resolution. "Teresa, you have shown that you do not care about my well-being. You have only sought your own benefit. Sarah has proven to be the daughter I never had, and she is the one who deserves my trust and my legacy." Teresa approached Sarah, her voice filled with venom. "Do you think you can come here and take everything away from me? You have no idea who you're dealing with." Sarah stood firm, her voice calm but determined. "I'm not here to take anything away. I'm here to protect my father, and I won't let anyone hurt him, not even you." With one last look of hatred, Teresa left the room, but not without leaving a threat in the air. This is not over. The final confrontation was near, and Sarah knew it. That same night, while Mr. Valdez rested, Sarah decided to talk to the mansion's staff. She explained the situation and asked for their support. Most of them, who had seen Teresa's mistreatment and manipulation over the years, sided with her, pledging their loyalty to Mr. Valdez and Sarah. The next day, Teresa made her move. She called a meeting at the mansion, summoning several allies and the lawyer to try to reverse her husband's decision. However, Sarah was prepared. She had gathered all the necessary evidence to prove Teresa's manipulations and abuse. The meeting began with high tensions. Teresa presented her case, arguing that Mr. Valdez was not in a rational state to make decisions due to his health. However, when Sarah presented the evidence of Teresa's attempts at manipulation and harm, the atmosphere changed drastically. The lawyer, after reviewing all the evidence, turned to Teresa. "These proofs are compelling. Financial manipulation and mistreatment are clear. Mr. Valdez, your decision to disinherit Teresa is legally justified." Teresa, seeing her plan fall apart, made one last desperate attempt. "This is a conspiracy. This is all a ruse to drive me away from what is rightfully mine." Mr. Valdez, with a trembling but firm voice, responded, "No, Teresa. What is rightfully mine is peace in my final days and the company of a family that truly loves me. Sarah is my daughter, and she is the one who deserves my trust and my legacy." With the final decision made, Teresa was expelled from the mansion. Her threats and manipulations no longer held power in the Valdez house. The staff gathered around Sarah and Mr. Valdez, offering their support and ensuring that days of peace and love were to come. Sarah and her father, now united more than ever, began to rebuild their relationship and their lives. Although the battle had been arduous, truth and love had prevailed. Together, they prepared for a future full of hope and renewed purposes, determined to make the most of every moment life offered them. With Teresa out of the mansion, an air of tranquility and hope began to envelop Sarah, and Mr. Valdez lives. The atmosphere, once filled with tension and suspicion, transformed into a space of warmth and rediscovery. Father and daughter dedicated themselves to rebuilding their relationship, learning more about each other and enjoying each other's company. Mr. Valdez, though still frail, showed renewed vitality. Conversations with Sarah became the center of his days, filled with laughter, shared memories, and dreams to be realized. It was during one of these conversations that a transformative idea emerged. "Sarah, I've been thinking," said Mr. Valdez one afternoon as they strolled through the garden. "I have resources that could be used for something good, something that transcends this mansion. I want to do something meaningful with what remains of my life." Sarah looked at him with curiosity. "What do you have in mind, Dad?" The old man smiled, his eyes shining with enthusiasm. "We could create support programs for teachers and patients like you. Reform the education and health system so that others don't have to face the same difficulties you have. I want us to use our wealth and resources to make a difference." The idea resonated deeply with Sarah. Having experienced firsthand the difficulties of being a teacher and a patient, she understood the importance of a solid support system. "It sounds like a wonderful idea, Dad. We could help so many people." Together, they began to plan. Sarah immersed herself in research, contacting charitable organizations and experts in education and health. Mr. Valdez, for his part, used his connections to gather a team of professionals willing to collaborate on their project. The mansion became a hub of positive activity, with frequent meetings and ambitious plans taking shape. They decided to start with two main programs, one focused on supporting teachers with resources, continuous training, and emotional well-being, and another dedicated to providing medical assistance and support to chronic patients and their families. The enthusiasm of Sarah and Mr. Valdez quickly spread, attracting volunteers and sponsors who shared their vision. The first step was the creation of a charitable organization in honor of their rediscovered family bond. They named it Valdez Gomez Foundation, combining their surnames as a symbol of their union and shared purpose. The foundation's mission was clear: to improve the quality of life through education and health, offering comprehensive support to those who needed it most. The foundation's inauguration was an emotional event. Friends, former colleagues of Sarah, mansion staff, and new allies gathered to celebrate the beginning of this noble cause. Mr. Valdez, though physically weak, gave a moving speech, thanking everyone for their support and sharing his vision for a better future. "Today, we take a step toward a brighter tomorrow," he said with a trembling but convinced voice. "Our foundation is a tribute to all those who struggle every day for a better life. Together, we can make a difference." Sarah, by his side, felt immense pride. The journey had been arduous, full of challenges and revelations, but they had reached a place of hope and renewal. As she looked at her father, she knew it had all been worth it. With the foundation in full swing, Sarah and Mr. Valdez dedicated themselves entirely to their mission. Every achievement, every success story of a teacher or patient they had helped, gave them strength to continue. The work not only gave them renewed purpose, but also strengthened their bond, uniting father and daughter in a cause that transcended their own lives. The road ahead was still long, filled with challenges and ambitious goals, but Sarah and Mr. Valdez were prepared to face it together. The Valdez mansion, once a place of secrets and tension, had become a beacon of hope and purpose, lighting the way to a future full of possibilities and compassion. The Valdez Gomez Foundation had begun to change lives, and the mansion, once full of tension and secrets, had become a place of hope and renewal. Each day brought new challenges and successes, and both Sarah and her father immersed themselves fully in their work. Weeks turned into months, and soon, the foundation earned a solid reputation in the community. Sarah and Mr. Valdez spent their days visiting schools and hospitals, talking to teachers and patients, listening to their needs, and adapting their programs to have the greatest possible impact. Seeing the positive effect their work had on others' lives strengthened their bond and gave them deep satisfaction. One morning, while having breakfast together, Mr. Valdez took Sarah's hand and looked at her with eyes full of pride and gratitude. "Sarah, I never imagined I could do so much. In such a short time, not only have I found my daughter, but together we have created something that will help many more." Sarah smiled, feeling warmth in her heart. "All this has been possible thanks to you, Dad. You gave me the opportunity to change lives, and at the same time, I found my purpose." Mr. Valdez nodded, his eyes shining with emotion. "And that is the most important thing. We have found a purpose, one that has united us in ways we never imagined." They decided to organize a special event to celebrate the foundation's first anniversary. The mansion was filled with flowers and lights, and everyone who had supported their cause was invited. Teachers, doctors, patients, volunteers, and benefactors gathered to celebrate the achievements of the past year. During the ceremony, Mr. Valdez took the microphone, his voice firm and full of emotion. "Today we celebrate more than an anniversary. We celebrate life, love, and hope. My daughter, Sarah, has been my strength and my inspiration. Thanks to her, we have transformed this mansion into a home for the community, a place where everyone can find support and compassion." Sarah, standing by his side, could not contain her tears of happiness. She took the microphone and looked at the crowd. "This foundation is a testament to the power of love and determination. Together, we have created something beautiful and meaningful. Thank you all for your support and for believing in our vision." The event was a resounding success. The mansion buzzed with laughter, music, and conversations filled with hope. Sarah and Mr. Valdez moved among the guests, receiving hugs and congratulations, feeling that every effort had been worth it. At the end of the night, when the last guest had left and the house was quiet, Sarah and her father sat together in the garden. The stars shone in the sky, and a gentle breeze caressed their faces. "Dad, we have achieved so much," said Sarah, her voice soft but full of pride. "And this is only the beginning. There is so much more to do, and I am excited about what the future holds for us." Mr. Valdez nodded, his gaze fixed on the stars. "Yes, Sarah, we have a long road ahead, but with love and determination, I know we can achieve anything." From that moment on, they dedicated themselves to expanding the foundation, seeking new ways to help and support those who needed it most. Their work took them to places they never imagined, but they always returned to the mansion, their home and the heart of their mission. Sarah and Mr. Valdez became a symbol of hope and change, inspiring others to join their cause and believe in the power of love and compassion. Together, they walked toward a future full of promises, knowing that as long as they were united, they could face any challenge. The story of Sarah and Mr. Valdez was one of redemption, love, and purpose. A story that reminded everyone that, no matter the difficulties, there is always hope and the opportunity for a new beginning. And so, with each dawn, they continued their journey, bringing light to the lives of those who needed it most, building a legacy that would endure for generations. What an exciting journey we've just experienced together. But this is only the beginning. Click on the next video that appears on your screen and keep enjoying amazing content. If you want me to keep bringing you these stories every day, consider supporting me with a coffee through the Buy Me a Coffee link in the pinned comment. Your support is what makes it possible for me to keep telling these stories. See you in the next video.